These are our life's aha moments from the perspective and experiences of two Christian women who are focused on creating a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ.
Join us as we share and discuss insights we have learned and provide tools to empower you on your journey of intentional creation. Welcome to another episode of Ahas, Awakenings, and Applications. I am Leann.
And I'm Melissa.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We are going to be talking about the topic of connection. And I think this is an interesting topic. This has been my word of the year for this past year. And as I've been thinking about what that has meant for me this last year, I realized that it wasn't really about learning about connection. I didn't study any books or read any talks about connection that specifically. But for me, it was about the doing, taking action, and finding ways to create connection for myself and connecting to people around me. And I am really grateful for all the connections that I have made this last year. I feel like I have worked diligently to just reach out in ways that I haven't before and have made some connections and friendships and strengthened friendships that I've already had and had some experiences that have just been really touching for me. And I am just really grateful for that. So this week, as I was thinking about, well, what will I be talking about, on the podcast, I was like, well, maybe I need to find some talks or stories because I have not done that this past year. And I didn't find a whole lot with the word connection so much, but I did find some things in Atlas of the Heart from Brenè Brown. So, and I'm sure you did too.
Yes.
And I really like how she describes what connection actually is. Did you find that in her book too? Yeah. She defines it as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. I think that part is important. And when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship.
Yeah, I
I
saw
think
that.
I'm like, wow,
Isn't that
that's
amazing?
that's really a great definition. I love that idea of deriving that sustenance and strength from a relationship. Isn't it so
Mhm.
true that when you have a relationship with somebody, if you don't feel those things, that relationship kind of wanes? You're like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I just really love her definition of that. So what have you been thinking about with connection this week?
Well, I read her section on connection in that book, and that
Mm-hmm.
was really, really helpful. I thought it was so interesting because it really builds on the belonging that we talked about last week.
It
And I
does.
really feel like that we need to feel belong, like we belong to ourselves. When we talked about that last week, about how if we belong to ourselves, we feel that belonging. And I'm going to add, if we feel that belonging with Heavenly Father and with Jesus Christ, that then we are in a perfect position to be able to connect with other people because it's from a connection of authenticity, and that
Yes.
we have that understanding and that got grounded in who we are. And then it's super easy to make connection with other people. And I love
Right.
how she said, you know, to feel seen, heard, and valued, and when you can receive without judgment. And I think those connections that I've made, those really really super close relationships that I have with people have that. I
Mm-hmm.
have, a lot of other connections with other people, but not as much because it's not as deep because I don't feel that in some of those other types of relationships.
Right. I agree with that. And she even says that authenticity is a requirement for connection and that
Mhm.
perfectionism is a threat. And I
Oh,
just thought, oh my goodness, isn't
yes.
that so interesting? Because perfectionism comes from trying to make friends and connections.
Hmm.
But yet, when we get stuck in that perfectionism, it threatens those connections because we are not being authentic.
Yeah, she brought up a whole thing, a whole section since you mentioned that. that she said there's a couple of serious watch outs when it comes to disconnections. So she was
Yes.
really talking about when we disconnect with people, when we
Hmm.
feel alone. And this is, we've talked about this before in other episodes as well, that's kind of a pandemic of disconnection right now in our world. And it's just with social media, we think we're so connected, but we're not because we're not
Hmm.
authentic. It's not
Hmm.
authentic connection. We need to be person to person, heart to heart, talking with someone face to face to have that really deep connection.
Yep.
So she talked about the first one was to avoid, let's see, to avoid the pain and vulnerability that may result when their effort to achieve connections are unsuccessful. Individuals may enact their own disconnection strategies, so such as hiding parts of themselves or disconnecting their need for others. They may learn that it is safer to keep their feelings and thoughts to themselves rather than sharing them in their relationships. And I know I've done that.
Well, I feel like we are in such a toxic society, and there is a lot of judgment and criticism
Right.
that we almost feel like we have to do that just to be able to have any kind of conversation with people without
Right.
being attacked or
Right. But I think that also goes back to that. Do you belong? Do you feel like you are in tune with yourself? Do you feel like you have that acceptance of yourself? I think it all comes back to that
Mhm.
because when you do, it doesn't really matter what anyone else says
Absolutely.
because
You
you
have to
know
be
who you
pretty
are.
secure in that too,
Yeah,
don't
but
you?
I think, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the most important thing is to really become secure in who you are. And I think that really comes with that connection with Christ, that
Yes.
relationship with Him, that relationship with Heavenly Father. Those are key. And I think that's so important to have that, to be able to know who you are and then to be able to connect with others and to feel like that you belong. But I think it's so interesting how she says the second watch out is about perfectionism, and it's exactly what you said, that we want to connect, but then that perfectionism keeps us from doing it. And what she says here is there's actually a perfectionism social disconnection model, and this research shows that people who are high on the perfectionistic traits scale behave in ways that cause perceived and actual exclusion rejection by others. And she says, in other words, so for me, my perfection, I mean, I that didn't really make a lot of sense to me, but she says, my perfectionism drives me to show up in ways that lead people to push me away. So I'm wanting to, I want that connection so much that I'm actually pushing people away because I'm trying to do it in a perfect way.
Yes, and
I'm like, oh my
I think
word.
when I read that, I'm like I see that in areas of my life,
Yeah,
and
me
I'm
too.
like, oh man, if I can just be more authentic and share some of my struggles. I don't have to give all the details, but if I can just say, "Hey, I understand. I've
Hmm.
had some similar experiences." I think that makes you more real, right? You're
Yeah,
more
yeah.
tangible.
Hmm.
I think and yeah, we doing things that push people away. I'm like, wow, that's really counterintuitive. Um,
But I know
and
I've done it. I
I know
I
I
can
still
see it
do
in my
it
life. Yeah,
sometimes.
me too.
I think one thing that came to my mind is, attending church. Especially in the past, where, people have problems, but we all come and put our best face forward. I
Mhm.
think, back in the day, many years ago, people weren't as authentic with what was going on in their homes.
Mhm.
And I think we are a little more open about our struggles and the challenges that we face. And I love that we are going that direction. It just makes it feel like you belong there because you're not the only one
Mhm.
struggling with,
Yeah.
your kids or, your job or your spouse or whatever, because we all have those things at some time. Well, when I was looking for more information about connection, I found this study. This comes from the Center for Compassion and Altruism. It's a research and education. They said in 2004, there was a study done, and over 25% of Americans said they had no one that they could confide in.
Wow.
And so they said that suggests that one in four people that we meet may have no one they call a close friend. So this was over 20
That
years
was 20
ago.
years ago.
Yeah. And so you
Wow.
think about where we are today. I don't
Oh,
know what that number is, but to have no one that you can call a close friend, no one that you can confide anything in, to me is that's really heartbreaking. I think it's
mhm.
really sad. So, and they also said that the research is finding that loneliness represents one of the leading reasons why people seek psychological counseling. So
Interesting.
I think that, as I think about those two things, I'm like, I think this is so much bigger than I actually realized. I know it's really big. I think because of the way we do things today in our society, my husband
Mhm.
and I were talking about social media, how it really has been just a big experiment, right? Um, because social media hasn't been around forever. It's been around, I don't know how many years now. So I think we're just starting to see the long-term
The
effects of
effects.
what that is doing to our mental health and to our children.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
where was I yesterday? No, the day before, I was at the airport and I was looking around and noticing how many people were on their phones and not paying attention to
Mhm.
anything around them, not people, not anything. And I was just thinking, my goodness, this is really sad that we're not even taking a moment to look up and talk to one another when and when somebody does talk to you, you're kind of like surprised because
Mhm.
all of a sudden there is somebody who is alive and aware. And it's just, I don't know that we realize how much it is really affecting our society.
Well, I just there were a few times that I was at a park this summer and seeing moms there with their kids. They
Hmm.
weren't playing with their kids.
Yeah.
They weren't talking to other moms. They were on their phone. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that is so sad that these poor kids don't even have that interaction with their parents. And I've seen that in restaurants where both parents are on their phone. Uh, it's
That's what I saw. I saw a man, a woman, and their child, and all three of them were on their phone while they were eating. We were at a restaurant, and they weren't having any conversation whatsoever. They were just that whole time, they were all on their phones. And I just thought that's super interesting. I think the only time they looked up was when they placed their order, when the waitress came around and not to judge, I just thought, I hope, that I can be aware and paying
yeah,
attention to, I have to be very, very intentional with that so that I can have those connections. And
yeah,
um, I think I am learning that after this past year. I'm learning to pay more attention to that and strike up those conversations and
yeah.
smile and be friendly.
So I was over Thanksgiving. I had all of my family together, and we just constituted when we were all together a no phone policy. So
Hmm.
that when we were together, we were together. We were interacting with each other, and it was great. It was so
Hmm.
amazing, and
Yeah.
it just kind of goes back to what President Oak said in his last conference address. Kind of going back to the old ways. Having dinner together at night. How many families have dinner together all together every night?
Sit at the same
Yeah,
table.
sit at that same table. I know that was something I really worked at, when my kids were home. That was really important to me. And I think they've all told me that that was, really important to them. And I think that's what has really kept us really close because we have those connections and we feel that family belongingness. We
Yeah.
feel that together. And I think that was one of the things that really made a difference in our families is we took that time.
Hmm. And it's definitely, I think, an effort nowadays, much
Oh
more
yeah.
so than it was
Yeah.
then. There's so much more to distract us and detract us from those goals of family connections and not just family, but friends and people we don't know yet. I I think it's definitely we have to be very aware and
Mm-hmm.
um, very intentional. That comes up so much, but it's true.
I found a talk by, this is by Elder Gong, and this was April 2022 General Conference called We Each Have a Story. And the talk is really focusing on family history and finding your history, But I think something he said to me really clicked. He said, as we discover our story, we connect, we belong, we become.
Mm,
And I just love that because as we discover ourselves, as we discover our family, where we come from, our tribe, and then we can connect with others, then we feel like we belong in a community of people. And then that's when we are free to become, that's when we are free to grow and become who we can become within that safe environment. And Brenè Brown talked, this wasn't from her, but it's in her book. She says, people who have strong connections with others are happier, healthier, and better able to cope with the stressors of everyday life.
hmm.
So when we have that belonging, that sense of self, that sense of connection, then we are healthier, we are happier, and we want to help other people. I think it's a lot easier to serve other people when we are healthier and when we're happy.
It does give us that meaning and purpose, I think, when we have that
Mm-hmm.
connection. And we are actually hardwired to connect, to be
Yes,
connected
we
with
are.
people. And there's so much research out there now that talks about, it lowers blood pressure, you sleep better. I mean, the list is actually quite long of what they know about making connections. And I think, being aware of what those things are that disconnect us from one another, um, you
Mm-hmm.
know, helping our children to recognize those things too, because they're not may not be as aware of what that actually looks like or feels like, but we do. We have, grown up in a different generation and we've had that in the past. And so helping them to recognize that um, can just feel so good. It feels so good to be connected and be a part of something bigger.
Well,
And my heart longs for that so much.
mm-hmm.
I want that everywhere I go, and I don't always
Yeah,
feel that everywhere I
right.
go. And it can be frustrating to, I think, try and create that sometimes in your own sphere, like especially like outside my home, in a sphere, maybe at church sometimes, or maybe friends, just really working at helping other people to have that, even though maybe they don't realize that we each have a part to play in creating that
Mm-hmm.
connection.
Mm-hmm. But I think when we're vulnerable and we create that place of a safe space, then more people are more willing to be vulnerable, but we're vulnerable back. And so I think that's important for people to feel that safety with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what that can look like or mean is, listening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Helping people by listening to what they have to say and get curious about maybe what they're sharing with you instead of brushing it off or downplaying that what they have
Right. Or
going on in their
or
lives.
gossiping with others, just that's if someone confides in you, then you keep that to
Keep
yourself.
that confidence. Yes.
And I think it's, where that it goes back to that um, belong or the connection definition of that feeling seen, heard, and valued.
Hmm.
We've talked about that a lot, but I think it really comes back to that. We all want to be seen, heard, and valued,
Absolutely.
and that makes a
And
huge difference.
when we do not have that, just think about when you have felt that way. It just kind of puts up a wall, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when you don't feel seen or valued or heard, it can put up a wall and, um, yeah, prevent us from building those friendships and relationships with each other.
Yeah. But I think, we go back to the plan of salvation. It's about connection.
It is.
It is all about connection. And it's, sealing families together
Yeah.
and sealing our family. We're all family. Everyone on this earth is family. we're all family and sealing the families together. And that, because, I've read several scriptures lately. I think it was in the Doctrine and Covenants, actually. I don't remember which section right now, but we have to be sealed to those on the other side, and they have to be sealed to us. It's like there's these links that have to come together.
Yep.
And in order for them to help us, we have to help them. It's like we're all in this
It's synergy.
together.
It's
Yes, and it's
synergistic.
all about connection. And going back to Elder Gong's talk, when we know where we come from, we know our ancestors, and we do that work, and we find out about their lives. And I think there's importance of knowing that.
It's all about relationships. And I think when you
Mhm.
think about the gospel and the plan of salvation, Heavenly Father is telling us these things in a little bit different way. But if we just follow him and listen to our prophet and apostles, we will be doing the things that will help us to create connection.
Exactly. It's so true. Which is so interesting. We do all this other research and things, and it's just like if we just follow the prophet, we're good.
We'll be good. Yeah. We won't even have to know the why or why not, right?
Right.
I think that in the past, I've focused a lot on, connecting with God. And at this time in my life, I feel like He's really telling me to connect with those around me, not
Hmm.
stop connecting with Him, but start including more people
Hmm.
into those connections. It's not just about my connection with Him. And I feel like He's really telling us, this gathering that we are focusing on
Hmm.
at this time is really about creating those connections.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I think that, in the past it was just, oh yeah, I'll connect with him and, it'll be good. I can go from there. But I feel like that is no longer the case, that I have to expand that and make
Hmm.
that circle bigger, like we've talked about in the past.
Hmm. That's really interesting you say that. I haven't thought about that, but I probably would think that same thing. But I've spent so much time on that relationship with him. He's like, okay, now connect with other people.
Yep.
Now gather. We talked about several weeks ago about, casting our nets out and gathering. And
Yes.
so it's now that you have that connection with him, it's now gather others.
Yes. Bring them into the fold.
Hmm.
Bring them into that circle that you have.
Hmm.
Mm. There's a
And
lot
not
to offer.
not excluding others, but including, like we talked
Including,
about.
yeah. And just having, finding out what we each have to offer one another. And that
Hmm.
connection, just thinking about those, you talked about family history and thinking about those links in a chain
Hmm.
and those connections, right? I think that's so important.
Yeah, years ago I was my I think it was my mom's dad's family, and they'd put together this book um, of genealogy and family stories and stuff like that. And I was reading it one day, and I guess my great grandmother, um, she was in Cache Valley, and they didn't have very many doctors, or I don't think they had any doctors. So they actually chose a few women to go, and I think they went to Salt Lake. They actually moved to Salt Lake for 9 months, and they did like some you know, basic medical training, and they also learned how to deliver babies and stuff like that. And it was really interesting. And she had like 13 kids or something like that. And I'm like, she left her home, her family for 9 months to
How did she
learn.
do that?
I know, I don't know how she did that. I mean, I'm sure she had older kids that helped with the younger kids, but I was like, wow, that's huge. But it was so interesting because at that time I was going to massage therapy school, and it was a 9 month program. And I just felt this link with her, like this connection with her. Like, I
Hmm.
didn't leave my family for 9 months, but I certainly, had to do a lot of studying and stuff like
Yeah.
that during those 9 months. But it just created that link, and I just kind of have this kinship with her now, just because we kind of have a connection with our stories. So,
Right. And I like that you mentioned that. The last couple of weeks I've been typing up a lot of my stories from my childhood for my children who
Mm,
are grown. And I put them in a small booklet and just wanted to share with them more details and stories that, will help them to know more about me and to be have that vulnerability and create those connections. And I don't know if my children will read them or ever, ask questions about them, but they're there for them when they're ready for them. And I
hmm
feel like that has really, it just feels like so good to be able to share these things. There's good, there's
hmm
ugly, there's all kinds of growth stories, and I think that it was good for me to be able to share that and just feel like I could be more real with my kids. And because I feel like there is a part of me in the past that was even trying to have that perfectionism for them too. And,
hmm
I'm not sure how that, I think this allows them that space to be human too and give them that opportunity to be human. And hopefully we can make some new connections
Yeah,
in the things that we share with one another, and hopefully they can see how those things can help them with the challenges that they're going to be facing or are already facing.
I love that.
Yeah.
You should do that.
I plan to add to it as time goes on because I know there's a lot of
Yeah,
things I haven't added, but those were the ones that came to my mind first that felt important.
that's a really great idea. I mean, I think back and wish that I had that with my grandparents, wish I had their stories. I wish I had. I keep trying to get my parents to do it.
I tried with my mom and my dad, and they would share a few stories, but there's still so many more questions. And even, right after they passed away, all of a sudden these questions came up that I never thought of
Oh,
before. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh my goodness. So I'm like, you know, I don't want my kids to have to question too many things. Hopefully they'll be able to, share these stories with their children and be like, your
hmm
grandma, this is what
Yeah,
she
yeah.
did or what she learned. And, it's for my posterity.
That's great. I
Yeah.
love that. So, what could we leave our listeners today as an invitation?
What if we just invite them to go out and make some connections? Maybe, um, say hi to someone at the grocery store. I know we say that all the time. Or just reach out to someone that you haven't talked to in a while.
hmm
Um,
Or get involved in something you haven't.
do something
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to a concert the other night and I was like, oh, I want to sing again. Like, should find a choir, go sing in a choir.
Right. Do what
Make
you
some,
love.
yeah, make some new friends and love and do what I love at the same time. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, maybe just look for those things that you can do that will help you to create connections.
yeah, I love that. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation.
Yes, thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Join us for our next episode as we continue our conversation about connection by reviewing Brenè Brown's concept of near enemies and far enemies, the importance of self-acceptance, and how prioritizing truths allow us to form deeper connections. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow or share with others so we are easier to find. Check out our show notes for each episode in your podcast app or YouTube, and join us on Instagram for more daily content at Awakenings Podcast.